The morning fog hung thick around Windsor Castle as Sergeant Marcus Thompson adjusted his bearskin hat for what he believed would be another routine day of royal duty. 23 years of service had taught him to read the subtle rhythms of palace life, but nothing could have prepared him for the conversation that would change everything. Marcus had joined the Queen's Guard straight from military college, driven by a deep sense of duty and honor that ran through his family like an unbroken thread. His grandfather had served King George VI, his father had protected Queen Elizabeth II, and now Marcus stood as part of the elite unit responsible for safeguarding the future of the monarchy. The red tunic he wore carried the weight of generations, each thread woven with pride and unwavering loyalty. The castle grounds buzzed with their usual activity as staff prepared for the day ahead. Marcus took his position near the private family quarters, a post he had held for the past 8 years. He knew every corner of these ancient walls, every security protocol, every face that belonged within these protected spaces. His colleagues often joked that Marcus could navigate the castle blindfolded, but for him, this knowledge represented something sacred, a trust placed in him by the crown itself. Prince George, now 16, had grown from the shy boy Marcus first met into a thoughtful young man, with an unusual awareness of the world around him. Unlike many teenagers who might take their privileged position for granted, George displayed a genuine curiosity about the people who worked to maintain his family's security and comfort. Marcus had noticed how the prince would nod politely to the guards, sometimes stopping to ask about their families or thank them for their service. On this particular morning, as autumn painted the castle gardens in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, Marcus noticed Prince George approaching with an unusual purposefulness in his stride. The young royal's expression carried a weight that seemed beyond his years, and Marcus instinctively straightened, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. The conversation that followed would challenge everything Marcus thought he knew about duty, sacrifice, and the true meaning of service. Prince George's words, spoken with quiet conviction, would set in motion a series of events that would ripple through the palace halls and ultimately lead to one of the most unexpected decisions in recent royal security history. As the morning mist began to clear, revealing the majestic towers of Windsor Castle in all their glory, neither Marcus nor Prince George could have imagined how this single conversation would transform their understanding of what it truly means to serve something greater than oneself. The foundation of a relationship built on mutual respect was about to be tested in ways that would surprise everyone involved, including the Queen herself. Prince George stopped directly in front of Marcus, his blue eyes reflecting a maturity that caught the veteran guard off guard. The usual royal protocol seemed to melt away as the young prince spoke with an honesty that was both refreshing and deeply moving. "Sergeant Thompson," Prince George began, his voice steady despite the gravity of what he was about to share. "I've been thinking a lot about the people who dedicate their lives to protecting my family, and I realized I don't know nearly enough about the personal costs of your service." Marcus maintained his professional posture, but felt a flutter of surprise. In all his years of service, no member of the royal family had ever initiated such a direct and personal conversation. The prince's words carried a sincerity that seemed to penetrate the formal barriers that typically governed their interactions. Prince George continued, "Last week I overheard you talking to another guard about missing your daughter's birthday again, because of your duty rotation. It made me realize how much you and your colleagues sacrifice for our family's safety, and I want to understand what that really means." The weight of this revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had indeed missed his daughter Emma's 15th birthday, the third one in 5 years due to his demanding schedule. The pain of disappointing her had been eating at him for days, but he had accepted it as part of his duty. Hearing Prince George acknowledge this sacrifice brought an unexpected lump to his throat. Marcus had always prided himself on maintaining the perfect balance between his professional duties and his role as a father and husband. But lately, that balance had become increasingly difficult to maintain. His wife Sarah had been understanding, even supportive, but he could see the strain in her eyes when he missed another family dinner or school event. Emma, once his biggest supporter, had begun to show signs of resentment toward his important job at the palace. The conversation that followed was unlike anything Marcus had experienced in his military career. Prince George asked thoughtful questions about the demands of royal protection, the emotional toll of constant vigilance and the impact on family relationships. The young royal listened with genuine attention, asking follow-up questions that demonstrated both intelligence and empathy far beyond his 16 years. What struck Marcus most was Prince George's apparent understanding that the royal family's security came at a real human cost. The prince seemed genuinely troubled by the idea that good people were sacrificing precious moments with their own families to protect his. This wasn't the entitled attitude that Marcus might have expected from someone born into such privilege, but rather a deep appreciation for the service provided by others. As their conversation deepened, Marcus found himself sharing stories he had never told anyone outside his immediate family. He spoke about the pride he felt in serving the crown, but also about the lonely nights standing guard while knowing his family was at home without him. He described the constant state of alertness required for royal protection, and how it sometimes made it difficult to fully relax even during his time off. Prince George absorbed every word, his expression growing more thoughtful with each story. When Marcus finished speaking, there was a long moment of contemplative silence. The prince's response would prove to be the catalyst for a decision that would surprise everyone, including the Queen herself. Prince George's response came not in words but in action. Over the following weeks, Marcus began to notice subtle changes in the young royal's behavior that spoke volumes about the impact of their conversation. The prince started acknowledging each guard by name during his daily movements through the castle, a simple gesture that meant more than he could have realized. But it was what happened next that truly demonstrated the depth of Prince George's character. Without fanfare or announcement, the prince began making small adjustments to his schedule that would allow the guards more predictable time with their families. When he learned that Marcus was scheduled to miss another important family event, Prince George quietly rearranged his own plans to ensure the guard could attend his daughter's school play. Marcus was initially puzzled by the sudden schedule changes until his supervisor, Captain Williams, pulled him aside with a knowing smile. "You've made quite an impression on the young prince," Williams said. "He's been personally requesting schedule modifications to ensure his regular guards have better work-life balance. Says he doesn't want anyone missing important family moments on his account." The realization that Prince George had taken their conversation to heart and was actively working to address the concerns Marcus had shared was overwhelming. It wasn't just a kind gesture. It represented a fundamental understanding of the human cost of royal protection that few members of the royal family had ever acknowledged so directly. Emma Thompson had been performing in her school's production of Romeo and Juliet, playing Juliet herself. For months, she had been telling anyone who would listen about her father's promise to attend, despite her previous disappointments. When Marcus walked into the small school auditorium that evening, still in his civilian clothes after rushing from the palace, Emma's face lit up with a joy that reminded him why family mattered so much. Sarah squeezed his hand as they watched their daughter perform with confidence and grace. "I can't believe you actually made it," she whispered, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Emma has been so excited. She was afraid to hope you'd really be here." As Marcus watched his daughter take her bow to thunderous applause from the proud parents in the audience, he felt a profound gratitude toward Prince George that went beyond simple appreciation. The young royal had given him something precious, the opportunity to be present for a moment that would become a treasured memory for his entire family. But Prince George's consideration didn't stop there. Marcus learned that the prince had been having similar conversations with other guards, learning about their families, their challenges, and their dreams beyond their service to the crown. The prince had even started an informal tradition of sending handwritten thank you notes to guards' families, acknowledging their sacrifice and expressing his personal appreciation for their support. These gestures, small in themselves, began to create a ripple effect throughout the palace guard. Morale improved noticeably as the guards felt genuinely valued, not just as security personnel, but as human beings with lives and families that mattered. The traditional distance between the royal family and their protectors began to soften into something that resembled mutual respect and understanding. Marcus found himself facing an unexpected dilemma. The very qualities that made Prince George such an exceptional young man, his empathy, his consideration, his genuine care for others, were also making Marcus question whether such a good person needed to be burdened with the knowledge of how much others were sacrificing for his protection. The turning point came during a quiet evening shift when Marcus found Prince George sitting alone in the castle library, surrounded by books about public service, leadership, and social responsibility. The young royal looked up as Marcus passed, by on his security rounds, and their eyes met with the same openness that had characterized their previous conversations. "Sergeant Thompson," Prince George called softly, "could I ask you something that's been weighing on my mind?" Marcus approached carefully, always mindful of protocol, even as their relationship had evolved beyond the strictly formal. Prince George gestured to the chair across from him, and after a moment's hesitation, Marcus sat down. "I've been reading about different models of leadership and service," Prince George began, indicating the stack of books on the table, "and I keep coming back to something you said about the difference between serving an institution and serving people. I think I understand now why that distinction matters so much." The conversation that followed revealed the depth of Prince George's internal struggle with his future role. He spoke about the weight of expectation, the challenge of being relevant in a modern world, and his deep desire to use his position to make a genuine difference in people's lives. But what struck Marcus most was the prince's concern about the human cost of maintaining the royal institution. "I look around this castle," Prince George continued, "and I see hundreds of people whose lives revolve around my family's needs. You, the other guards, the staff, everyone makes sacrifices so that we can fulfill our role. But what if there were a way to serve the people without requiring so much personal sacrifice from the people who serve us?" Marcus found himself in the unusual position of counseling a future king about the nature of duty and service. He shared his own journey of understanding, from his early days of blind loyalty to the institution, to his current appreciation for the people and values the institution was meant to protect. "Your Highness," Marcus said carefully, "the greatest leaders I have served under, both in the military and here at the palace, were those who understood that institutions exist to serve people, not the other way around. What you're feeling isn't a weakness, it's wisdom." Prince George's response was both surprising and deeply moving. He spoke about his vision for a more accessible, more human monarchy that could maintain its essential role while reducing the personal cost to those who served it. He had been researching other royal families, other models of service, looking for ways to honor tradition while embracing necessary change. What happened next would stay with Marcus for the rest of his life. Prince George asked him directly whether he believed that someone like Marcus, a good man with a family who loved him, should have to choose between serving his country and being present for his daughter's most important moments. The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that went far beyond their individual circumstances. Marcus realized that Prince George was grappling with fundamental questions about the nature of modern monarchy and his role in either perpetuating or transforming centuries-old traditions. When Marcus answered honestly that no one should have to make such choices, Prince George nodded with the satisfaction of someone whose deepest convictions had been confirmed. The prince then said something that would prove to be prophetic. "Then, perhaps it's time for those of us in positions of privilege to make some choices of our own." As Marcus left the library that evening, he had no idea that Prince George had already begun putting a plan into motion, a plan that would ultimately lead to Marcus facing the most difficult decision of his career, and one that would challenge everything he thought he knew about duty, loyalty, and the true meaning of service to the crown. The call came on a Tuesday morning when Marcus was at home, enjoying a rare breakfast with his family. Captain William's voice on the phone carried an urgency that immediately put Marcus on alert. "Thompson, I need you to come in immediately. There's been a development regarding Prince George, and the Queen has specifically requested your presence for a private meeting." Marcus's mind raced as he drove toward the palace. Private meetings with the Queen were extraordinarily rare for someone of his rank, and the mention of Prince George filled him with concern. Had something happened to the young royal? Had their conversations somehow been inappropriate? When Marcus arrived at the palace, he was escorted not to the usual meeting rooms, but to the Queen's private study, a space he had never entered in 23 years of service. The room was smaller and more intimate than he had imagined, filled with personal photographs and mementos that spoke of a life lived in service to others. The Queen entered quietly, her presence commanding, yet somehow warm. Marcus stood at attention, but she gestured for him to sit. an informality that only added to his confusion. "Sergeant Thompson," the Queen began, her voice carrying the weight of decades of experience in dealing with complex situations. "My grandson has made a rather unusual request, one that involves you directly. Before I share the details, I want you to know that whatever you decide, you have my complete support." What followed was perhaps the most surprising conversation of Marcus's life. The Queen explained that Prince George had submitted a formal proposal for restructuring royal security arrangements, specifically designed to allow guards more time with their families while maintaining the highest levels of protection. The proposal was detailed, well-researched, and demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of both security needs and human resources management. "George has also made a personal request," the Queen continued, her eyes twinkling with what Marcus could only describe as pride mixed with amusement. "He has asked if you would consider accepting a promotion to head a new family liaison program within the Royal Protection Unit. The position would involve less field duty and more administrative responsibility, which would allow you to maintain regular hours and be present for your family's important moments." Marcus felt the world shift around him. This wasn't just a job offer. It was Prince George's solution to the dilemma they had discussed. The young royal had taken their conversations about the human cost of service and transformed them into actionable change that could benefit not just Marcus, but potentially many other guards and palace staff. But the Queen wasn't finished. "There's more, Sergeant Thompson. George has also requested that this new position include the authority to review and modify security schedules to ensure that no one in the Royal Protection Unit has to consistently choose between their duty and their family responsibilities. He wants you to be the advocate for the people who protect us." The magnitude of what Prince George had accomplished hit Marcus like a wave. The young royal hadn't just listened to Marcus's concerns. He had taken them to the highest levels of palace administration and worked to create systematic change. This wasn't charity or pity. It was recognition of a fundamental problem and the implementation of a solution that honored both duty and humanity. Marcus found himself thinking about his daughter Emma, about the school plays and birthday parties he had missed, about his wife Sarah's patient understanding in the face of his demanding schedule. Here was an opportunity to serve the crown in a new way, while being the father and husband his family deserved. But there was a catch, one that would test Marcus's loyalty and principles in ways he had never imagined. The Queen's next words would force him to confront the most difficult decision of his career, one that would require him to choose between his traditional understanding of duty and a new vision of service that Prince George was offering. The Queen's expression grew more serious as she continued. "However, there is something you must understand about accepting this position. George has made it clear that he wants the Royal Protection Unit to be staffed by people who are there by choice, not obligation. He believes that true loyalty comes from willing service, not from people who feel trapped by circumstances." Marcus felt a chill of understanding wash over him. The Queen was telling him that accepting this new position would come with the expectation that he could leave if he ever felt that his family's needs weren't being met. More than that, Prince George wanted the entire protection unit to operate under this philosophy. "In other words," the Queen said gently, "George is asking you to help create a culture where stepping down from royal service to prioritize family is seen as honorable, not as abandonment of duty. He wants you to be living proof that the royal family values the personal lives of those who serve them." The weight of this revelation was staggering. Prince George wasn't just offering Marcus a better job. He was asking him to help transform the entire relationship between the royal family and their staff. The young royal understood that people who felt valued and respected as whole human beings would provide better, more dedicated service than those who felt obligated to sacrifice everything for their duties. Marcus thought about his father and grandfather, who had served the crown with unwavering dedication, but had also missed countless family moments in the name of duty. They had been proud of their service, but Marcus now realized they had also paid a price that perhaps didn't need to be paid. "There's one more thing," the Queen added, her voice carrying a note of deep affection. "George has specifically requested that if you accept this position, you train other guards in what he calls sustainable service. The idea that protecting the royal family should enhance rather than diminish the lives of the protectors." As Marcus sat in the Queen's private study, surrounded by the weight of royal history and tradition, he realized that Prince George was offering him something revolutionary, the chance to redefine what it meant to serve the crown in the 21st century. The decision before Marcus wasn't just about accepting a promotion. It was about embracing a fundamental shift in how royal service was conceptualized and practiced. Prince George was essentially asking him to help prove that the monarchy could evolve to serve not just the British people, but also the people who served the monarchy. Over the following days, Marcus discussed the opportunity extensively with Sarah and Emma. His wife was initially skeptical, wondering if this was too good to be true. But Emma's reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. "Dad, this prince really understands what matters, doesn't he?" Marcus realized that his daughter had captured something essential about Prince George's character. The young royal did understand what mattered: relationships, family, human dignity, and the idea that service should be sustainable and fulfilling rather than crushing and all-consuming. But accepting the position would require Marcus to step down from his traditional role as a royal guard, ending a family tradition that had spanned 3 generations. It would mean embracing change over tradition, innovation over established practice. The decision that Marcus ultimately made would surprise everyone, including himself, and would set a precedent that would influence royal service for generations to come. Marcus made his decision on a crisp autumn morning, exactly 1 month after his first meaningful conversation with Prince George. He accepted the position, but not before having one final discussion with the young royal who had changed his understanding of service forever. They met in the same library where they had shared their deepest conversation about duty and sacrifice. Prince George listened carefully as Marcus explained his decision, nodding with satisfaction when Marcus expressed his commitment to creating a more sustainable model of royal service. "Sergeant Thompson," Prince George said, using Marcus's title one last time before his promotion took effect, "I want you to know that this conversation we had about the human cost of service has changed how I think about my future role. When I become king someday, I want to lead a monarchy that serves the people without crushing the spirits of those who serve it." The implementation of the new family liaison program exceeded everyone's expectations. Marcus threw himself into the role with the same dedication he had brought to royal protection. But now his success was measured not just in security metrics, but in the improved morale and family satisfaction of the palace staff. Within 6 months, the rate of guard turnover dropped significantly. More importantly, the guards who remained reported higher job satisfaction and better family relationships. The program became a model that other royal households began to study and adapt. Marcus's own family life transformed dramatically. He was present for Emma's 16th birthday, a celebration that became even more special because of his previous absences. He coached her school's debate team, attended parent-teacher conferences, and took family vacations that weren't interrupted by emergency calls from the palace. Sarah often remarked that it felt like they had gotten their husband and father back. But Marcus knew the truth was more complex. He hadn't gotten his old life back. He had discovered a new way to live that honored both his service to the crown and his responsibilities to his family. The most powerful moment came a year later. During the Queen's annual Christmas message filming, Marcus was present in his new capacity when Prince George approached him with genuine warmth and gratitude. "Marcus," the prince said,
using his first name in a way that signified their evolved relationship.
"Thank you for teaching me that true leadership means caring for the people who make everything else possible. The lessons you've taught me about service and sacrifice will stay with me when I take the throne." As Marcus looked around the room that day, he saw guards who knew they could build careers without sacrificing their families, staff members who felt valued as whole human beings, and a young prince who understood that the strength of the monarchy lay not in the blind obedience of its servants, but in their willing dedication and mutual respect. The story of Marcus Thompson's transformation from traditional royal guard to family advocate became legendary within palace circles. More importantly, it represented a quiet revolution in how the royal family understood their relationship with the people who served them. Years later, when Emma Thompson graduated from university with honors and credited her father's presence and support for her success, Marcus knew that Prince George's quiet but impactful move had changed more than just job descriptions. It had changed lives, families, and the very culture of royal service. The young prince who had listened to one guard's struggles and responded with systematic change had proven that true, Nobility lay not in maintaining tradition for its own sake, but in having the courage to evolve those traditions to better serve human dignity and flourishing.